Look at this. According to new figures, births to white British mothers have fallen to their lowest recorded level in England and Wales, lowest ever. And somehow we're expected to discuss this like it's a minor statistical footnote buried between weather reports and supermarket discounts. No, this is one of the biggest demographic stories in modern British history. And the reason people become so emotionally explosive discussing it is because it touches something deeper than politics, identity, continuity, legacy. The question underneath all of this is simple. What happens to a nation when the population that historically built it starts shrinking as a share of new births and before the usual screaming starts? No, asking that question is not automatically racist. It is a demographic question, a population question, a future question. The numbers are real. According to new reporting based on Owen's data, there were 585,396 live births in England and Wales in 2025. Of those, 310,456 were born to mothers classified as white British, accounting for roughly 53% of births. That is the lowest share recorded. At the same time, more than a third of mothers giving birth were born outside the UK. Those are the numbers, not opinions, not slogans, not conspiracy theories. Numbers. Wait, it gets worse. Because this isn't happening during a baby boom. Britain's overall fertility rate has collapsed to historic lows. The total fertility rate sits around 1.39 children per woman, massively below replacement level. That means the conversation is not simply white British births are falling. The conversation is white British births are falling inside a country where births generally are collapsing. That matters because it changes the scale of the discussion completely. Why are people so afraid to discuss this honestly? This is what fascinates me. The second somebody mentions demographic change, the conversation immediately becomes deranged. One side starts screaming, replacement. The other side starts screaming, nothing is changing. Meanwhile, the statistics are sitting there looking exhausted because demographic change is obviously happening. You can literally measure it. The real question isn't whether change is happening. The real question is, what does it mean? A nation is more than a border. This is where people become uncomfortable because many people instinctively understand that nations are not just geographic zones. A nation is history, culture, memory, traditions, language, inherited identity. People care about continuity. That is normal. The Japanese care about Japanese continuity. The Chinese care about Chinese continuity. The Nigerians care about Nigerian continuity. The Indians care about Indian continuity. Yet the second some British people express concern about demographic transformation, parts of the conversation instantly become radioactive. Why? The double standard problem. This is one reason people get frustrated. If somebody says, I want Japanese culture preserved, nobody panics. If somebody says, I want Indian identity preserved, nobody collapses emotionally. If somebody says, I want Jewish continuity, people understand the concern immediately. But the moment somebody says, I wonder what happens when white British births fall to historic lows, suddenly everybody starts acting like a smoke alarm. That inconsistency fuels distrust. The word nobody wants to say, demographics. Let's use the correct word. Demographics. Because demographics are not ideology, they are population patterns. And population patterns shape politics, economics, culture, education, housing, national identity. Ignoring demographics because the topic feels uncomfortable is intellectually childish. Britain is changing, obviously. This is another thing that drives people insane. Some commentators behave as though noticing change itself is morally suspicious. But Britain is changing, objectively, measurably, visibly. The statistics show it, the census shows it, population data shows it. Acknowledging demographic change is not extremism, it's observation. Observation is not hatred. This distinction is incredibly important. People increasingly confuse observation with hostility. They are not the same thing. Saying the demographic makeup of Britain is changing is not the same statement as I hate immigrants. Those are completely different claims, and collapsing them together destroys serious discussion. The future Britain question. Let's ask the uncomfortable question directly. What does Britain look like in 30 years, 50 years, 100 years? What happens culturally, socially, politically? People are allowed to ask that. In fact, they should ask that. Because demographic shifts reshape nations. Historically, they always have. The elite response is always strange. One thing I notice constantly is that many elite institutions seem terrified of discussing demographic concerns honestly. Instead, the public often gets one of two responses: either nothing is changing or how dare you notice. Neither response works because people can literally see the data, and once institutions start appearing afraid of obvious discussions, trust collapses. This is why the story is so explosive, because underneath every demographic discussion sits a deeper emotional question: who are we becoming? That is the real argument, not statistics, identity. People want to know what survives, what changes, what remains recognizably British. Those are legitimate questions. The internet makes everything worse because social media immediately pushes everyone into extremes. Either Britain is finished or nothing is happening. Both positions are intellectually lazy. Reality is usually more complicated, but complexity performs terribly online. Outrage performs brilliantly. The reason this story matters is not because numbers alone determine a nation's future. The reason it matters is because demographics influence every long term conversation about identity, culture, politics, and national continuity. And pretending people shouldn't care about that is absurd. The figures show white British births have fallen to the lowest recorded share of births in England and Wales. That is a significant demographic milestone, whether people like it or not. Not because it automatically means catastrophe, not because it automatically proves some grand conspiracy, but because it represents measurable change. And serious societies discuss major demographic change honestly. They don't hide from it. They don't panic about it. They don't scream people into silence for noticing it. They discuss it. Because here's the reality: population trends are among the most powerful forces in human history. They reshape nations' economies, identities, cultures, and when the largest historic ethnic group in a country falls to its lowest recorded share of births, that is objectively a major national story. Whether people celebrate that, worry about it, or feel indifferent to it, the story remains the same. The numbers are the numbers, and pretending demographic change isn't happening simply because the conversation makes people uncomfortable is not intelligence, it's denial.